Bonjour, thank you for tuning in. I'm presenting Translating the Great War, a French Soldier's Diary of Hope, Discharge, and Disgust. This diary consists of two volumes written between 1914 and 1918 by a French infantryman whose name is unknown, but we do have his birth date and enlistment date. So hopefully in the future, with some archival research, we can uncover his true identity. But his diaries recount the daily experiences he had in the French army, and they're mostly mundane in describing the food he ate, which he was quite fond of, the juice, which is slang for all the coffee they drink, and as well as travels on foot or by train to different cities. And interestingly, he has a short military prison stint, and that's not because he did something horribly wrong, but he did not grab all of the portions, all of the food portions he was supposed to. But his time in military prison was not too horrible. And my translation in particular is the last 11 pages of the second volume from July 8th of 1916 to October 26th of 1918. And a change that occurs is that while earlier on he writes almost every day with different injuries that keep him in the hospital, he composes short paragraphs which describe several months. So, for example, page 84 is all about the events, the mundane events from August 7th to November 12th of 1916. And ultimately, he is medically discharged. He survives the war, but the outcome of his life is unknown. To begin with hope, he writes, "Finally, I've come to terms with it now without worrying much more. And if I must, I'll climb up again on the operating table a fourth time, perhaps leaving it to half a dozen." So he had a pretty bad head injury, which he had to be operated on multiple times. But he uses hope and humor as a way to cope with the injury and remain optimistic about being able to join his brothers on the front line. And two grammatical aspects to note is that he makes a lot of spelling errors when writing. So j'en ai pris. Here he uses the wrong auxiliary verb. And then he uses the conditional. So j'arriverai, je remonterai. But when translating this, I chose to use the future tense, just as that sounds more natural to English speakers. So I will climb up again. Perhaps I will even get to half a dozen. And on February 3rd, 1917, he writes that he is medically discharged. He takes this hard, but he continues to support the French soldiers and their efforts, and he maintains connection with the army and stays up to date on the battles, but he does have to take his part in civilian life. And he ends his diaries with this strongly worded paragraph. "If not for all those dear mutilated and murdered mortars, for those magnificent and rich cities destroyed, such as Rennes, Lille, immortal Verdun, and so many others by the damned Kraut, a race like ours cannot succumb, that they would mean the enslavement and the oppression of vulnerable peoples by that loathed and abhorred race which is named Germany." When translating this, I tried to remain as authentic and maintain the tone that he used. So I kept words like damned Kraut, the enslavement and the oppression of vulnerable peoples, just because he was so patriotic and saw this First World War as really crucial for the French to win. And he actually does predict that if they don't win, perhaps another war could break out in 20 years. So in that sense, he predicts the Second World War. But that is how he ends his diary volumes. Merci.